to Creative Type Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Haney, and today I'm flying solo. My co host, Lori Rivera, will be back next week. And today we've got episode 13. What tools in the studio is my go to tool? So thank you for tuning in. And I guess it's going to be Easter this weekend. So happy Easter if you celebrate that. That is the reason why Lori isn't here. We weren't able to do a podcast last week together. Our kids are on spring break, or they were last week. So anyway, we're just have a little short and sweet podcast today, just with me. And we have some listener questions, a listener question from Elizabeth. And she writes in and asks, what tool in your studio brings you inspiration? I had to think about this because I don't know that there are any tools that actually inspire me, but I do have go-to tools. And so I kind of twisted the title around to fit that. So Elizabeth writes that she is really liking, she's fangirling, I should say. She's really liking the fan brushes right now. She says, I feel like I can make lines that are loose on purpose. Well, I had to read that a couple times to think about what she meant by that. And I think I've got it figured out. Painting loose is what a lot of us strive for. And why not have a tool that makes it easier to do that, right? They tell you, oh, you hold your brush at the end and use paint from your shoulder. It's harder when you paint small. You tend to get tighter, I think, on that. But man, if there's a brush that can help you do that. Now, I'm not a big fan of the fan brush, but I have not tried to use it the way that Elizabeth is talking about. Really, the only time I've ever seen the fan brush used, and I've tried to use it a couple times, but I didn't like the outcome. I remember Bob Ross, the shows on Bob Ross. He was a fan brush user, and I never really liked the way that those tree leaves turned out. So I'm sure that Elizabeth is probably using it in a different fashion. I would love to know more, Elizabeth. So tell us some more on how you're doing that, because that really is intriguing for me. I'd like to know, in what way are you using your fan brush? Like, are you loading it up with paint, or are you scruffing it, or just any kind of details you can give me? I'd love to know more. And my go-to brush, I guess, is really the flat brush. That's the one I use most. And I have all different sizes. I have some really, really big ones. They look about, I don't know, inch and a half, 2 inches probably. And I find that even though I bought those, that I don't really use them that much, even on large canvases. And I probably should, but they're really thick, and it feels like they hold a whole lot of paint, and I can't get the paint out. Now, it could be the quality of the brush, and I don't really know because I haven't bought any more. I thought, well, if I didn't use this one, I'm probably not going to use another one if I buy it. So why waste the money? But one brush that I've had on my mind for a long time, ever since I've seen it, probably since last summer, there is a teacher named Jessica Hughes, and she has a membership, I believe. And I was in that membership for a little while, and I can't remember exactly what it's called. Anyway, she would give painting, not really tutorials. We would watch her paint sometimes, which, most people find that fascinating. I can't be the only one, right? It's, even though I'm an artist, I still love to watch other artists paint. So Jess had this brush, and she could not remember what the name of this brush was or where even she got it. So I have been searching ever since then to find this brush. And all of us were like, oh my God, what brush is that? The only thing closest that I could find was a triangle brush, which I've never used myself. So, but that was the closest that looked like it. I thought that maybe it was a little different in that maybe it was more like an angular brush also, and it kind of had like a little one-sided mohawk, like it went up on the top angle, and then several little bristles went up further, like, I don't know, maybe an eighth of an inch, quarter inch possibly. It was really long. The bristles were. And then at the end of those, they kind of, like, the only thing I can think, to explain it was this like a little spritz of almost like a little firework of brush bristles. And, she would get that thing wet and it would just glide across her canvas. And it was so fun to see the marks that this brush made. So I guess if there was any kind of tool that would bring inspiration, it might be that one. That'd be the only one. Usually I get inspiration, from stuff that I see, like, my plants around me and beautiful colors, beautiful textures, stuff like that. But it's very interesting that Elizabeth is inspired by her tools. I think that's really cool. And I would be curious to know what Lori is inspired by. I know she's inspired by a lot of different things. But the little Mohawk brush, I wish if any of my listeners know this brush, if you know what I'm talking about, I have not seen. I've done Google searches. I've searched for uncommon brushes, artist brushes, and I have not found that exact brush. So it is still on my search. I'm still searching for it. So if anyone knows what that is, please drop me a line. Let me know what that brush is. I would love to have one just to try it out. Some other tools that I like to use that are, like I said, they're not really inspirational, but I like the cool effects they give me, and that would be credit cards. They give you these little plastic cards. Now I'm at the age where AARP is sending me junk, and I take those cards and they really bend nicely. So you can smear paint on with that. They're really good for putting on gesso, especially if you want to have a little texture with your gesso. They're really good for that. And I'm never without a spray bottle. That in itself can not only keep your paints nice and moist, but you can get all these like technique splatters with the with the water bottle. If you leave like I'm talking about acrylic paint, if you paint something on your canvas with acrylic paint and then you kind of let it get tacky, which doesn't take very long at all, and then you spritz on your water bottle and then you take a brush and you brush it off, then it leaves all these cool little spots, which can be, I think the first time I discovered that was probably a mistake, but then I thought, oh, that's cool. I have to remember that for next time whenever I'm doing like an abstract, or if I wanted some texture and for some rocks or just anything that you'd want texture for. It doesn't actually it's pretty smooth still. It's not texture as far as what you can feel, but it gives you that visual texture, which is really cool. So I don't know what else Elizabeth was using, but she said she's really like these fan brushes. And I can see how that could, you just don't have much control. So that is how you could get the looser effect. I'm guessing that's what she's gathering from there. And I think fan brushes, they only come as a short brush, don't they? I'm not real sure. But that's an interesting tool for sure. I may have to revisit that one, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for calling in. Well, I guess she didn't really call in. She wrote in. Thank you, Elizabeth, for writing in your questions and ideas for the podcast. Like I said, this is a short one since I'm flying solo today. Episode 13 is kind of I don't know, serendipity though. 13 has always been my lucky number. For some reason, it has been my lucky number. So maybe it was meant to be that I'm doing a solo flight this time. But I do hope that Lori will rejoin me next week. And until then, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you like the podcast, please give us a review on Apple or anywhere that you listen to the podcast at. And we would love to give you a shout out if you give us a written review, and leave us some information on how we can contact you, or just email us and tell us which review you left, and we'll give you a shout out. We'll put it in our show notes, a link on where to find you, maybe Instagram or somewhere that you prefer like that, your website, anything to help give our listeners a little shout out. Just to show our appreciation. And I guess that's all I've got. So thanks so much for listening, and happy Easter to those who are celebrating the end of this week. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.